Hello and welcome to the Builders Podcast. Today I'm thrilled to welcome Malte Niepel, the co-founder and CEO of RECOVA AI. Since October 2022, Malte has been at the helm of RECOVA, a company dedicated to helping e-commerce shops recover lost visitors. Under his leadership, RECOVA provides a second chance for shops to showcase personalized product recommendations and turn potential missed revenue into tangible results, driving both customer satisfaction and business growth. What sets RECOVA apart is its innovative approach. They use a customized recovery system that doesn't need any personal information. Instead, it looks at product similarities and what customers have viewed to attract potential buyers. It's a privacy-friendly and very effective way to improve e-commerce results. Malte, it's a pleasure to have you on the podcast. A warm welcome. How's it going?
Thanks for the great intro. Hi, Lee. I'm doing well. How are you?
Yeah, all good. Thank you. Really nice that you're joining us, and looking forward to diving deeper into RECOVA. But let's start a little bit with your background, a little bit on the inspiration behind RECOVA as well. Can you tell us a little bit first about your background and what came before RECOVA? How did you get started in the tech and e-commerce industry?
Sure. So I started my career back in 2015, full-time with About You, one of the largest fashion retailers in Europe. And then I transitioned over to product management roles in different companies in Amsterdam, then moved back to Hamburg, seen different companies, B2B, B2C platforms, ad products. And the idea for RECOVA came from seeing a competitor of ours actually do exactly what we've been doing, and we saw potential to improve that. We saw that they had impact with e-commerce shops, and were really able to help them, and we wanted to improve that. So what happened was, at my last employer, I met our current CTO, and together with another co-founder, we started the company in October 22.
Yep.
As you already mentioned. And we started it besides the job. So one of the biggest challenges was really managing our own time and stress levels during that time period. And once we were able to profitably pay our own salaries, we were able to move out of our jobs and do this full time.
Okay, so there were three of you in the beginning that essentially started to try and get the idea, the business off the ground, right?
Exactly.
Fantastic. Exactly. And tell us a little bit about that kind of Eureka moment. You mentioned kind of you saw competitors at the time doing something similar, and you thought essentially there was something that you could maybe take and improve upon or do better. Tell us a little bit more about that kind of moment when you started realizing there might be something here for you to start.
Yeah, so the third co-founder and I, we've been friends for over 10 years, and he told me about this company that he saw had an impact. He was working at a co-working space and saw what they were doing, saw that they had a huge impact with a lot of e-commerce shops and really could help them. He saw the numbers, he heard about the numbers, was close with the founder, and he kept telling me about it. And there was always a drive from me and from him actually as well, to start our own company. We did so actually in the beginning of COVID. That was liquidated quite quickly. There were completely different challenges in the market during that time period,
right?
And no one wanted to really hear from us during that period. So we got our feet wet, and we saw this opportunity come up, and we knew that we had the operational strength and knowledge to actually improve upon it and make it available for even more e-commerce shops out there. And so we started talking to the third co-founder, which was the engineering manager in the team that I was working in as a product manager.
Right.
So we already had a very close working relationship, and we could build up on that very quickly and get it off the ground quite fast.
Super. Really nice that you kind of have this working relationship and acquaintance with these co-founders of yours from the very off. And founded in 2022, as you mentioned as well. What does a team at RECOVA look like today? What are the kind of key roles would you say kind of essential for driving the innovation and success for you at the moment?
That is, in fact, a very good question. I think everyone actually contributes to the innovation at RECOVA. But one of the challenges definitely has been moving over from an IC role over to a management position and steering a little bit more. Plus, also hiring is one of the big challenges right now in order to really make an impact and have a team that can actually have impact and drive innovation on a regular basis. It's just not possible for us as founders to continuously drive innovation whilst also doing IC work. And this change over to a managerial position really has been one of the big changes in order to let other people drive innovation even better than we could.
Right. Yeah. I think that's often the case. You kind of get more people in, they're kind of more experts in their specific field and can really drive that part of the business, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially if you have people that are smart. I don't. Sometimes, if you have fast learners and smart people in your team, that's just the most valuable thing that I can think of, because you can pay for experience, but you can also pay for people that really fit the values that you have and fit your team environment just very well. And if they're fast learners, if they're fast paced, they just drive innovation much quicker. Even though you might have been the expert prior, they become expert even faster if they can focus on it and you let them focus on it, and take it from B to anywhere else in the alphabet.
No, really, really interesting point, and kind of potential versus not that it's always versus, but kind of potential versus experience as well, right? Really interesting. Out of interest as well, what does you mentioned kind of the idea, spawning partly from how you'd been seeing this kind of previous competitor in the other business doing things. What does a competitive landscape look like for RECOVA? I mean, I know that there are a number of other companies doing similar things, so indirect and direct competitors for you. How does RECOVA essentially kind of differentiate itself in this space?
So we, from the get-go, wanted to have our own our own AI personalization engine, and that's what we did. So we started out creating the recovery pages for our customers, but also serve those recovery pages with our own AI personalization algorithms.
Right.
Because we saw this as the core product, having good recommendations that we can build up on, improve, increase the CTR, therefore increase the likelihood of someone buying again, returning to the shop. That's one of our key differences. That's also what we're building up on.
Right.
So we are going deeper and deeper into AI-powered personalization on the shop as well. Not just on the niche that we started in, which is one touch point within the entire customer's journey, right? So if you go to a shop and you just look around and you just don't find what you're looking for and you're leaving the shop, that's this niche touch point that we've been serving for now, and that's our core product. And it's great to have that niche. Since we are really focusing on AI-powered personalization, we already had requests from our existing customer base. Could you also do that on site? And that's the kind of direction that we're taking now. So really building out our data warehouse, really building out our algorithms, really improving up on the data that we have and utilize better in order to increase the likelihood of someone buying on shop as well. Super.
And let's dive into a little bit more the kind of the product functionality, essentially how it all kind of comes together and works. Because to kind of, I've seen like quoted on your website that RECOVA's like AI-fueled recovery and recommendation engine provides essentially the ability to delight bouncing visitors with a proven return on investment, essentially. Can you explain how this kind of recovery engine works, and kind of precisely how it helps e-commerce shops to recover these lost visitors?
Yeah, sure. We have traditionally pop-ups. Everyone knows them.
The exit intent.
Many people love them. Yeah. And it's definitely one way in order to recover visitors to your shop or to keep them a little bit longer. I mean, at least as long for them to click the pop-up away and then leave the shop eventually. But it is, I don't want to diminish it. There is an impact from pop-ups, and they've been around for quite some time. And the way that we are implementing it is seamlessly into the buyer journey when they're clicking back. So it's just one click away from their traffic source. The way that it works is that we use the history API of the browsers, and without wanting to go too much into technical details here, it helps us to identify what was the referrer, how can we make sure that we're not triggering midway in the journey, and enabling our customer base to really only pay for increased revenue. So our core business model is based on the CPO business model. Only if they have increased revenue are we actually taking a share, a commission rate based off of that.
Okay, so you're essentially taking a share of the revenue that's generated by that user staying on the web page if they kind of go forth and buy a product basically that's been recommended by this recovery engine.
Absolutely right.
Fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely right. And that's also why you mentioned the ROI. That's the reason why we make it as simple as possible to actually analyze first up. Does the potential customer, the prospect, actually benefit from our solution? And if so, to what degree? And that's the way that we're communicating it to the potential prospect. We want to make sure that both sides actually benefit from it. And if not, we're not even engaging in the conversation or trying to engage in the conversation.
Got you. So it's a win-win. Fantastic.
Ideally, there is a win-win for every partnership that you have with other companies, right?
Indeed. So you guys, essentially, you're creating this customer's recovery page, right? So it's a page, in a sense that you were talking about, like these pop-ups, banners, or whatever it might be. These when users are exiting or leaving a page, you have this recovery page, boosted, then kind of powered by AI, essentially. Can you elaborate a little bit more on how AI is kind of integrated here and how it kind of enhances the personalization here or the effectiveness of the recommendations?
Yeah, sure. So when you go to a web shop, what you leave is breadcrumbs of information here and there. The most obvious one is what kind of products are you clicking on? Are you clicking on a certain polo shirt that's blue or red, or are you clicking on trousers? What are you actually looking for when you browse the page? It's similar to when you actually enter an offline shop. You go in and you have a salesperson come and approach you and say, I see that you're looking at those polo shirts. Can I help you somehow? Is there something? We have a couple of polo shirts on this shelf as well. You might not have seen it yet. Can I show it to you? That's exactly what we're doing. So we triangulate information of products rather than demographical information. So we don't bank ourselves or our algorithms on personally identifiable information, but instead on product data. We see much more similarity when it comes to product interest rather than demographical similarities. And that's what we use in accordance with the kind of interest that you've shown on the web shop during your shopper experience. And then show you relevant products based on that information, the similarity to other products and the similarity to other user journeys that we've seen that were similar to the one that you've had. It's that kind of experience that a salesperson has when they work for a longer time in that shop and they see similar people browsing for similar things or looking at the same shelves and realize, okay, I identify a certain interest here and I might be able to offer certain products to serve that interest.
Got you. Yeah, makes sense. And this kind of recovery page and the suggestions, recommendations that are made on here, I'm interested into, as to kind of how customizable it is, because I'm assuming that in order to kind of make this scalable, it has to be customized, specific for the client's needs, right? So page needs to be in the client's brand. We're talking kind of style and tone of voice, etc. How do you guys work with this, basically, that kind of ensuring that it's kind of appears to the user just like a seamless part of the journey that they've been on up to that point?
We have a configurable setup. So over the past 1.5 years and having quite the customer base at this point, which I'm very happy and lucky about. We identified certain performance improvements within the recovery page possibilities that we have. And sometimes it's really just as simple as having products above the fold. Right. You find some shops, you go to the website and you don't even see one single product above the fold, especially when you're on mobile. It happens quite often because there's filters or there's a header. There's so much stuff going on that keeps you from actually experiencing or being inspired by the product offering that they have. And all those learnings, which the one that I was just describing is pretty obvious, but we took the learnings from all our recovery pages and improve the entire set of recovery pages on a regular basis. Right. But we do that with a configurable setup. So we test regularly, we try different things, we adjust to the CI of the specific brand, of course. But on top of that, we're adding additional information like percentages or strike price, all that kind of stuff. We just test on a regular basis. Sometimes it doesn't work. We can't extrapolate every single learning to other shops. We try them out, and when we see something working for all, we adjust the configurable setup to incorporate this change.
Super. So yeah, very adaptable, very kind of iterable. And I guess you get loads of different kind of technical questions coming from potential customers, and among them these kind of SEO related ones, right? One I have that I was kind of interested in is kind of this kind of recovery engine's potential impact on loading and rendering time for your customers' sites when they use this kind of solution, right? Because I'm basically considering that these kind of loading, rendering speeds and everything kind of impact Google ranking of web pages, in the search results. Can you talk a little bit about kind of potential kind of impact on these kind of aspects? Loading and rendering speeds for different websites, these pages in particular.
Our websites are triggered based on our JavaScript snippet that we implement. I think most MarTech companies work with JavaScript snippets, and nowadays moving over from cookies to local storage or other storage possibilities server side. It's working exactly the same with us. So we are using JavaScript snippets, and if that JavaScript snippet might be broken, it's a regular issue that might occur, then the page load speed might be impacted. But we haven't had one case yet in which that happens. So our performance optimized templates are also optimized for loading speed. So when there's a redirect happening, we make sure that redirect is as quickly as possible. But it hasn't really happened that it impacted the shop itself, because that's just the JavaScript snippet that is being loaded, and it's super small. It's just a couple of text or a couple of rows of code. Yeah.
Nice. And what about you mentioned how you're kind of you're pairing these pages or the recommendations with AI. Are you able to talk a little bit about the kind of AI driven recommendations and how they might have this kind of positive impact on SEO rankings? I'm assuming through kind of this improved user engagement, right? Reduced bounce rates, which again can kind of impact rankings and stuff like that. Have you seen this kind of tangible impact from the recommendations coming from your algos so far?
Not that I know of. So you're asking quite SEO based questions. I
there
can see that
just a couple more
some experience in the background.
No, a little bit, just a little bit.
No, we haven't actually. So that would definitely be a long-term effect to see. What we do see is the return on investment is huge. So what our customers pay for the added revenue that they make, as opposed to have retargeting ads, is amazing. And that's what we're banking on. That's what we say. You are improving your return on advertisement sales, or also your return on investment, whatever you want to look at in terms of your investment being made.
And talking about whatever they might want to look at, what are some of the key metrics that RECOVA focuses on to help the e-commerce businesses, your customers increase their conversions essentially?
It's CTR. It's click-through rate from our recovery page back to the shop. We exclude all menu links and footer links, of course. So we only look at the product clicks. And that CTR metric is most important to us, because if we can improve that, we know that the recommendation has been improved somehow. Or when we see impact on it, it means that the recommendation worked well. That's the primary KPI that we have. And of course, we have several secondary KPIs that we look at. Ultimately, what we want to achieve is a higher conversion rate, and ideally also a higher AOV during that period. So it's the typical e-commerce KPIs that you'd be looking at. But the one that we can really change with our solution is the CTR. That's what we can really influence. Ultimately, when they're on the shop and the shopping experience is not great, it's difficult to improve anything on the conversion rate side or on the AOV side. But what we can influence, and what we're influencing with our customers through AI personalization, is the CTR from the recovery page. And for our AI personalization customers, we can also increase the likelihood for a conversion rate based on the implementation that we have for our on-site recommendations there.
Super. And yeah, because this click back essentially is then taking the user to this recovery page, as we've been speaking about. And when they click on a product on their page, there's personalized recommended to and for them. Are they then taken back to that specific product on the client's website, essentially, right? So that all of the kind of analytical side of things for the client are also kind of taken into account here as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So they're returned to the product detail page of the respective product that the shopper clicked on. And from there on, it's basically over to the shop, basically, in order to increase the conversion rate. But yeah, that's absolutely right.
Super. And could you talk us through a little bit the kind of onboarding process for a new client? So I'm a client that I come to you, we talk, maybe you give me a demo of the product. What does the kind of whole sales, but also the onboarding process look like for a new client?
So when starting from the demo or the entire outreach sequence?
Starting from the demo, let's say I land on your website, and we go from there.
All right. So during the demo, we are quickly showing how it works and the impact that we might be having on your shop. So I'd be asking you, hey, based on all the assumptions that we took from SimilarWeb or manually ourselves, looking at the website and guessing AOV, which is very difficult. But we usually are quite conservative in our assumptions. And then we go into the call, I give you a demo, I show you our assumptions. I say, Lee, what do you think? Is that close to reality, or should we make an adjustment here? I'll show you all the numbers, what we use in order to calculate the lost visitor revenue, which is our KPI that we're looking at in order to improve the customer's overall revenue. Because I, as a product manager, always wanted to improve every single journey, so to speak. So a buyer journey improvement and a customer journey improvement on our end was very important to me as well. So I wanted to tie it directly to the overall revenue and what kind of increase we can generate. So we're looking at this. And if you say, hey, Malte, this sounds amazing, let's get started. I say to you, all right, then the only thing I need from you is the implementation of our JavaScript, your product feed, and we get started. All the rest is up to us. You don't have any contract duration in the beginning. We're doing it CPO based. So if it doesn't work out with your shop, you don't have any costs. Right. And the recovery page is done by us. You'd hear from us within 1 to 2 weeks, and you take a look at it, give us some feedback. And once we release or activate our solution, that's when you're onboarded, basically. And from there on, you have regular review meetings with our customer success team. You take a look at the numbers at our dashboard. We share learnings. We try out new things. You could come up with new ideas on how to improve the recovery page as well, based on the product feed that you give us and all the data that you might be adding, like strike price or, I don't know, additional images that you might be using or want to use, description tags, there's a lot of product data that you could use in order to improve also the recovery page with it.
Right.
And that's it.
Super.
Then you have regular reviews with us.
Super, yeah, because that was going to be a kind of another question as well. Kind of what do the customers get access to? You know, so they have this account or this platform and an account manager, customer success manager, as you said, that kind of enables that kind of relationship, you and the client, basically to blossom throughout. Super, super. It seems like it's a really quite easy or minimal kind of risk to get this kind of set up and get started for the clients, right? Can you talk a little bit more? You mentioned the word challenge at the very, very start. Could you talk a little bit about, has there been kind of specific challenges that you've faced when building the product or trying to scale the product, for example?
Oh, there have been many. I wouldn't even know where to start. Of course, on a regular basis, as a founder, you get the shittiest problems to solve, and that usually just happens all the time. Yeah. And I don't even know where to start. But scaling the product has been, especially with the recovery pages, quite the problem. And we solved it, and now it's becoming a problem again because we're customizing quite a lot for our customers.
Right.
It's a cost issue. So you're improving on the cost side on a regular basis, but that's not where we currently are, because we try to grow further, and we are okay with manageable costs at that end, or on that end. One thing that is quite challenging is actually to make sure that you trigger at the right time in the customer journey. The browsers all work a little bit different. They all have their characteristics, to put it nicely. And it's not always easy to understand exactly when to inject the recovery page or when to trigger the recovery page. Right. And we spend a lot of time doing that because we believe that trust is one of the most important things, especially when our business model is CPO based. We do not want to have a trigger in between the customer journey. Exactly. And this just requires to make this really robust, have double checks, be okay with not triggering even though you wanted to trigger. So to have basically false negatives is okay for us. Yep. We just really want to make sure that this works correctly. So that was also one of the technical challenges that we had when scaling it up. Especially because a lot of shops also have very different systems. Some are single page applications. Some are a little bit easier, like Shopify, for instance, where you have an app marketplace and you can actually use that to your advantage as a marketing technology company to create your own app. So there's different challenges for all the different environments that you have. Right. There's a lot of customization and trying to really distill that customization into something that is repeatable and saves you costs when scaling it up. That's definitely a challenge that we still haven't solved for, but it seems to be more like a process that we constantly need to make sure is not going to balloon. Exactly.
Yeah, no, that you're continuously kind of working in, or striving to kind of make those improvements. It's super interesting. And when you talk about kind of, okay, at what point of the kind of buyer's journey do you kind of trigger this, or like what is the optimal time? You don't want to trigger it kind of mid-journey, like you're saying. How do you work with those kind of things in particular as well? This must be really, really tricky to know, okay, this buyer is at this stage of their journey. They have this intent at this point in time. When should we kind of, when are we going to kind of trigger the kind of recovery page or whatever, if it's on them clicking back or whatever it might be? How do you kind of work with this? What kind of data do you collect along the way to kind of inform your decisions here?
So we mainly use the history API. Yeah. And we also use local storage. So if we have a return visitor, we know in the local storage for some time that this is a return visitor.
Got you.
We have frequency capping. So we're not triggering on certain user IDs or session IDs. Session IDs is the correct word here. We also have a mapping of different sources of traffic. So if you come from Facebook, or if you come from email, or you come direct organically, we have different buckets on this. So we have a mapping, and we want to make sure that we offer our customers the possibility to select, hey, I only want this to be triggered when someone comes from social. Mm-hmm. So we have this bucket of social, and then we trigger it.
Yep.
Those are the mechanisms that we use in order to make sure that it works correctly. And then we have a couple of that's what I mentioned in the previous statement, that we really want to make sure that we rather have false negatives than false positives. So on our server side, we really make sure that we cut everything off if we're not 100% sure that this is actually someone that we want to trigger the recovery page for.
Yeah. Super. Talking a little bit, we you've mentioned kind of AI a little bit, but kind of industry trends are kind of what you kind of see, particularly obviously in the e-commerce industries. What do you see as some of the kind of emerging trends that you think will kind of shape the future of online shopping, let's say? I mean, I've seen, just one as an example, kind of this rise of social commerce, I think it's called, with social media platforms, becoming ever more kind of powerful sales channels. Essentially, you've got shoppable posts, you've got live shopping, whatever it might be. Can you talk a little bit about certain kind of trends that you guys are kind of staying on top of as well?
The one trend that you were just mentioning is a super interesting one that we are not particularly focusing on, but there are so many trends in e-commerce. It's probably I would say the oldest online business, because it's so obvious. You just trade online. All of a sudden you have the internet, and then what are you going to do with it? You explore blogs and you do stuff, and eventually you are able to buy something. And two trends that we are really looking for. One is software commoditization. It's been going on everywhere, not just in e-commerce. And the other one, of course, is AI. It's a huge buzzword, but at the same time, we are exactly the ones that are using it, that are bringing it to the market. And those two trends, for me, are quite impactful, because software commoditization, for me, means that it becomes cheaper and cheaper to build something. And for that, it also happens in the AI space. You look at compute costs, and it's just constantly dropping.
Right.
And you're able to provide even better algorithms to the market anywhere and everywhere. It doesn't just include e-commerce at all. And with the rise in additional technology tools to make it easier to create software, it just becomes so much cheaper on a regular basis to provide these services. And we want to ride exactly that. So we want to offer good prices for recommendations to improve the whole landscape of e-commerce. So we want to enable actually small and medium enterprises with affordable AI solutions that previously, or a couple of years ago, have only been available or accessible to very large companies like Zalando or Amazon. And that's exactly why I'm looking at those two trends, because I just think if you know how to build software and you know how to build it well, then the third one is how fast and how cheap can you actually build it. And that's your profit margin, but it can also be the profit margin of your customers.
Exactly.
And it just becomes, everywhere we see it, it becomes cheaper and cheaper to access certain online services or software services. And we want to do exactly that. Democratize it to small and medium enterprises, what has previously been only accessible to very large companies.
No, really, really interesting point. The accessibility aspect is, I can imagine, really, really key, particularly for these SMEs. And I'm so thankful as well to kind of see these, like you were talking about, the computing costs kind of dropping over time, and kind of, I think this competition between the kind of different models that keep on being released as well it can only be good for the kind of the end user as well, in terms of what they're capable of, but also kind of price wars as well, essentially.
And it's especially in marketing technology industry. Sorry for interrupting. I think especially in the marketing technology industry, it feels like swimming in a pool of sharks, because there's so many companies out there, and there's so much competition out there. One thing that differentiates most of them is price and the way that they do go to market. It's not. We're not talking about software anymore. We're not talking about software innovation. The big software innovation, especially in AI, is usually done in the US. To be quite honest, right? It's what we usually read about. It's where we usually see most of the AI innovation happening, because there's most funding, and it's super expensive as well. So what we do is we benefit from, or we're standing on the shoulders of giants when it comes to AI in Europe, and I think especially in marketing technologies, there could be huge benefits from having more transparent prices, and that should eventually spill over to the customers. And that's really what we want to focus on.
Yeah. Fantastic. And talking a little bit, Malte, about privacy and personalization here, you've mentioned earlier on when we were talking as well about you're not using kind of personally identifiable information per se here. How do you ensure this kind of, because what you're offering in these kind of recovery engines are this kind of very kind of customized and personalized, let's say, offering essentially. So how do you ensure personalization and effectiveness while also maintaining this kind of privacy standard? And do you also think that, sorry to kind of interrupt, but do you also think that this kind of a potential kind of personal identifying the person as well in the future could be a viable option, even though it does come with these kind of, privacy questions, let's say?
Yeah. So my opinion on privacy is that it's really an unlevel playing field. We constantly talk about GDPR in Europe, and what I do see in the market, especially in e-commerce, is that most marketing tech solutions that could have, or that are built by large corporations in-house, can't be built in-house. That's a fact.
Right.
They can't all build it. What that means is that oftentimes, especially if you need a marketing consent, there's a drop-off of usability for all the people that don't give the consent. So I see a lot of violation in the e-commerce space when it comes to GDPR compliance. And I completely understand it, because oftentimes, at least my shopping behavior, I just don't want to see those marketing consent banners all the time. Right. They're annoying me.
Yeah.
And ultimately, when I'm shopping, I want to shop as quickly as possible. Maybe it's because I'm a man and I'm particular in that regard, but I want you to give me really good recommendations and let me find what I'm looking for quickly.
Yes, quickly.
And then I want to get off.
Yeah.
And so there's a disconnect between what is being offered to us as customers, or ultimately as shoppers in the space based on the GDPR compliance, and what we're seeing the big corporations do. Yeah. They have huge access to all this data. They bank on it constantly by enabling us to buy ads. But when it comes to the e-commerce space, and where you have a lot of small and medium enterprise businesses, they're left behind because they need to make sure that they get the marketing consent. And if they don't do it, they have a huge risk of paying a fine. So I'm hugely annoyed by the way this actually impacts smaller and medium-sized businesses as opposed to the big ones. And getting back to your question, thanks for being patient with my rant.
No worries. It's a good rant. I like it.
Getting back to your question, how do we do it? It goes a little bit back to explaining how we think about recommendations overall. We think that product similarity says much more about, or your interest in a product and the similarity to this product says much more about you than your demographics. Right. We do not use demographics at all. We don't have them. We don't have access to them, and we do not want access to them either. Okay. Because we strongly believe that product similarity is just so much better in determining whether or not this is interesting to you. So we could both have the same age. We're both male. We both live in Europe. But it doesn't mean that we have the same interests in fashion. We could look at completely different products. And therefore also want completely different product recommendations. And that's exactly what we're banking on. So we want to have as little information as possible. The information that we do use is the click data, of course. What are you looking at? How long are you looking at it? What are you looking at afterwards? Is there a new connection that we see that no one else has done before?
Right.
Are you wearing your khakis with your pink polo shirt, or are you doing something? So that's the information that we use, and that's personally identifiable according to European law. Even though we wouldn't be able to actually de-anonymize this kind of information. It's still considered personal information, but it's not personally identifiable in this case. And we're doing exactly that. So we do not want to have any personally identifiable information there.
Fair enough. And yeah, as you phrased it, the ranch you were talking about earlier, in particular with kind of GDPR, and yeah, the fact that, quite frankly speaking, a lot of the bigger, or a lot of companies aren't following it per se. Well, how do you see the kind of future of kind of personalized marketing evolving? Not just with kind of consent and everything, but the kind of future of personalized marketing. Is there anything that kind of excites you there, or worries you, or kind of that you think is going to be kind of prohibitive still?
I think especially in Europe, it's going to be super difficult, and it's going to be an interesting space to watch how much we're actually regulating ourselves for our own benefit, but our own demise at the same time, because it does hinder a lot of consumption. It does hinder a lot of commerce happening overall, because that's what's helping us serve customers better, right? So I just have hopes that we find a good middle way and adjust a little bit the GDPR laws. I mean, there are ideas on how to change that. There are plans on how to also adjust the cookie consent banner, which we all know doesn't have much to do with cookies anymore since Google. But I mean, they're pushing it out as well. I just have hopes that there's some common ground. I'm a little bit worried about it, because it feels like Europe's left behind in this regard.
Right.
Especially for small and medium enterprises. Yeah. We gladly ship all our data over to the US when it comes to large enterprises. Yeah. But we are really concerned about small and medium enterprises. I mean, they don't even have the resources to analyze all this data. But still, we're concerned about them getting too much information, and we're too concerned about the small and medium enterprises violating privacy laws.
Yep.
That's my opinion. That's basically where my rant started, and I better end it here.
We could talk a long time about it, I think. But let us talk a little bit about success stories. Something for you to kind of brag about. Can you share any success stories from one or a number of your clients that kind of illustrate the impact of RECOVA's solutions?
RECOVA has helped up to 30% of their shoppers to return to the shop, which is an amazing achievement. We've seen really, really good ROIs, sometimes even above 18. So I'm super happy about these achievements, but I'm even more happy about the kind of team that we've been able to build, and the kind of teamwork that has evolved from building this team to achieve this kind of success that we currently have. And it's been talked about a lot, but I think we're also super lucky. We're lucky that we saw the opportunity. We're lucky that we worked on this opportunity. We're lucky with the customers that we've had so far, with the kind of team members we found for our company. So I'm just very grateful for the position that we're currently in, and for the possibilities that we have currently to serve even more small and medium enterprises in e-commerce with our solution. Nice. And ultimately also the success that we can celebrate for ourselves too.
Nice. And what's next for RECOVA? Are there any new features or kind of expansions that you're particularly excited about, that you're willing to kind of tell us about and spill the beans?
Yeah, I did already a little bit. So we want to move a little bit further into the AI personalization space. Yep. We already started with that one niche touch point, and we want to increase to further touch points within the shop as well, within the checkout, and offer that to even more customers. So that's the kind of trajectory that we have and work towards, and do that exactly as I said before, because I think AI and the commoditization of software is such a huge trend, or both of these are such huge trends. We want to do that with more transparency and with fairer prices to the market, and therefore help even more small and medium enterprises to be able to afford and also use then ultimately our solution that helps them increase their conversion rates.
Exciting. And in terms of the kind of growth of RECOVA, we spoke a little bit earlier about the we were kind of talking about the composition of the team, but we were talking more about kind of the the essential people or roles, and everybody contributing to the success of the company. How big is the company today, and what are your plans over the coming year or years in terms of growing the company?
Good question. And to be quite honest with you, we don't have a specific hiring strategy or hiring plan when it comes to that. Since we are completely bootstrapped, there's no external investors that ask exactly the question that you were just asking. But the question for us comes up when we know the pain is too high for us to continue with the size of people that we have.
Right.
And of course, it needs to somehow also work money-wise, that we can afford it.
Yeah.
But we don't have a specific plan like that. So in the beginning, our first employee was a working student that then transitioned over to a full-time position.
Fantastic.
We were lucky, and I think I'm still very lucky with him. He's a small diamond that we are super happy that we have. And that's kind of we kind of stumbled upon our hiring strategy. We realized, okay, now I'm freed up a little bit more from sales. And we can move into more strategic decision making or strategic thinking, and spend more time there. We did that, and then we realized, we can't really execute on it because we need more developer power. And we just moved from there. It's, of course, now it becomes more or increasingly important to look at it 3-6 months ahead of us. But there's no 1 year or 2 year planning.
Right.
Since our number one goal is to grow profitably, and we want to continue doing that with our employee base as well, and not fire anyone because we did miss planning and all of a sudden realize, we can't afford the amount of headcount that we have now.
Fair enough. Makes good sense. And one question I like to it's a general question that I like to give all of our guests really is it's more around kind of advice and but what's your take on some of the kind of biggest challenges that kind of tech companies in general are facing today, and kind of how can they be addressed? You can obviously draw on your own experience here.
Oh, we just talked about it. Actually, I like the way that you're asking questions also in sequence, because I need to get back to what I just said. Hiring has been the most difficult thing, and finding a good partner is absolutely crucial. So I think one of the biggest challenges literally is talent. Finding the right talent, finding the right people. I think I spend most of my time nowadays with hiring. I have so many interviews, and we reject a lot of people. We really want to find the right person for the spot, because, as I just said, our hiring strategy is about, there's a pain point now, and we can't continue with our current headcount. We need more support. We hire someone, and we want to have someone that really fits well, that we don't have to let go of again. And that's insanely difficult. It's something that I haven't done before in my product manager role. I interviewed some people along the way, but I was never the hiring manager. And now doing that on a regular basis is a completely new challenge to me, and I realize it's quite hard.
Yeah, it's not easy at all. And how, on that kind of theme, how would you say that you and your co-founders kind of, what makes you three tick? You said you'd known one of them for the past 10 years, I believe, and you'd worked with the other one before. But what would you say, like, during this time that you found has really made you guys tick?
We sat down together when we had the idea to work together, and we very openly talked about what kind of things that, sometimes it's obvious, but we talked about what kind of things do we really value? We wrote them all down and we made descriptions of them. So our company values have all descriptions or example text below them.
Yep.
And also we really made sure that we know what kind of areas each one is responsible for. And what does responsibility even mean?
Right.
I think it's great that you write down values, but it's even more important to define what those values actually mean to you and how they define themselves. And that's what we did, and that's what made us tick for the past 2 years.
Really interesting way to do it. And I think, I've had a guest before who said something very, very similar, that they did the same thing. Yeah. So nice, good, a good idea. And talking of ideas and advice, what advice would you give to aspiring entrepreneurs looking to start their own tech company, just like you guys did in 2022?
It's probably my favorite question. I always wanted to start a company. So I started uni in 2010, and I studied business and entrepreneurship. And ever since, I wanted to start a company, and it took me almost 10 years to start my first company. And my advice is get started. I felt always like I didn't know enough. I always felt very humbled by seeing all those success stories on LinkedIn. You told me that you don't have LinkedIn, and I find that fantastic, because if you have a small imposter in you, it's just triggered all the time when you're on LinkedIn.
That's part of it.
And it happened to me. It was insecurity for years. So my advice is just get started. You will fall on your nose. You will fail. And I'm failing on a daily basis with so many tasks. But my failure rate is decreased with all the learnings that I have now. And you can't really prepare for starting a company. You will be faced with a lot of stress, a lot of insecurity, the inability to execute sometimes, even though you want to, but you feel like, I just don't have the energy today to do that. And learning on how to deal with that only comes from actually doing it yourself. So get started.
Fantastic advice. Thank you, Malte. Anything you'd like to add before I wrap up? I think, just to kind of touch upon that advice as well. I think it's easy to kind of, kick the can down the road, or not to suggest that it's kind of a problem, but it's a problem in your head. You're kind of toying with the idea of starting a company. You have ideas, but you're just never quite sure about when to start. You say, I want to do something else first, whatever it might be. I need to, study this or become certified in this. I need to kind of prove something to myself before I do that. So I can agree with you. Just get it started and see what you learn along the way. Try and have fun doing it. But is there anything else you'd like to add before I wrap up?
Maybe one more tip. Reaching out to people is super important. Talking to people regularly about your idea, about maybe also your insecurities about starting a company and the worries that you have attached to it is so important, because every now and then you have a gold nugget in your network that you talk to. And it just opens up your mind and helps you excel with the problem that you currently have. So reach out to people, talk about it, be open about it. Try and reach out to people that you don't know, or ask people, hey, is there anyone in your network that makes sense to talk to, or you could recommend me to? Super valuable.
And that's something obviously LinkedIn is good for, which kind of makes me agonize about not being on there, which was a conscious decision. One, I think I'll ultimately kind of go back to it. It's kind of being nice. It's very nice not being there, but not being on any social media at all for a number of different reasons, actually. But I think when it comes to networking, it's absolutely essential. So one I should personally get back to as well. Yes. Anything else at all that you'd want to?
No, but it was a pleasure meeting you, because I think on LinkedIn I wouldn't have found you.
No, exactly.
So thanks a lot for having me. Thanks a lot for having me on the podcast.
Likewise, thank you so much for being here as well. And that wraps up another insightful episode of the Builders Podcast. A huge thank you to you, Malte, for joining us today, sharing your journey, the innovative work going on at RECOVA, and your thoughts of the future of e-commerce and technology. Really, really interesting discussion today. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
And for our listeners, thanks so much for tuning in. And until next time, keep innovating, keep building. We'll see you soon.